Who is Amy Coney Barrett, and what is her judicial philosophy, and how is she going to approach certain decisions on the bench? This is what we're talking about. This is the Scotus HQ. We're going to do deep dives because there's a lot of information flying around all over the place. So we're going to go straight to the source on some of these things. I've got 4 different cases that Amy Coney Barrett was involved in. We're going to do some very brief analysis on it just to sort of provide some more information, and you can make some conclusions one way or the other. Now, when we talk about Amy Coney Barrett, this is sort of her general information, general demographics, and what we're going to do is we're going to follow this format where we're going to sort of make some charts and compile all this stuff into some data so that we can see it at a bird's eye overview. And so here are some of the things that I thought were important to this analysis. We have these 4 individuals who sort of in the front running. We have Amy Coney Barrett, we've got Barbara Lagoa, Rushing, and Bade. And as we go through our analysis, we'll fill out the rest of this chart. But today, we're just focused on Judge Barrett. And she is from the 7th Circuit. We'll tell you what that looks like here in a minute. Her confirmation results were actually fairly close. So as a reminder, she's got to go through the Senate Judiciary Committee, and then she goes onto the Senate floor for a full vote. And when she was in front of the Senate, she sort of barely just squeaked this through. It was 55 to 42. When she was nominated to the 7th Circuit. There are other judges who have much higher sort of margins, much higher approvals versus disapprovals in the Senate. And so Amy Coney Barrett is somebody who, just based on even her confirmation to the 7th Circuit, is going to be viewed as controversial. So we should be prepared for that. The country should be prepared for that. Republicans, the Democrats. This will absolutely tighten up. I'm going to presume that there were other Democrats who made up this 55 because there's some of them would have needed to have crossed over in order to get to 55. But I will guess that this will not be the same. If this goes in front of the Senate, this will probably be a 51 to 49, just a split along party lines. She's also white. She's Caucasian. We can just take a look at her. Very, very staunch Catholic. This is something that has already come up in previous court nomination proceedings. This idea that she's religious and that she is going to sort of take orders from the Pope has been something that I think it was Senator Dianne Feinstein took issue with. And she said, yep, I'm a Catholic, and she owned it. And she said she had an answer to that question, but it is going to come up again. And some people may say that is a liability for her. Some other people may say that's an asset. And so that's certainly up for you to decide. She is also very young. 48 for a Supreme Court nominee is a nice young age. If she lived to be, say, 78 or in her 80s, like Ruth Bader Ginsburg was, 87 I think she was, that means she's almost got 40 potential years being on the Supreme Court, which is a long, long time. I mean, you can have that's 4 decades of case law and opinions. It's a big deal. So that is a young age. In other words, you wouldn't want to put somebody up there who was in their 70s, even though they're highly accomplished. You still don't want them on the Supreme Court because they may die soon, and you're not going to get the same mileage out of that candidate that you would somebody who is young, like Amy Coney Barrett. We also want to take a look at her home state. So right now, my understanding is she's living in Indiana, which I think is going to be, I think that's a traditionally red state. So if Trump nominates this individual, we have to also consider the politics of the situation. Okay, Trump is by all polls down in this election, and he's got some states that he needs to pick up and close that gap a bit. So is there a political component to this entire nomination process? If Donald Trump nominates Amy Coney Barrett, is he going to pick up a state that he would have otherwise lost? Louisiana is going to go red, so he's not going to pick that up. Indiana, I think, also already goes red, so he's not going to pick that up either. However, because she is part of the 7th Circuit, that circuit covers a part of Wisconsin, which was a big deal in the 2016 election, and so that may be important to the Trump administration and to the Republicans in this election cycle. So, was she a former prosecutor? I did not see anything about that. This is my credential. I want to know whether these people used to be prosecutors. I am a criminal defense attorney, so I do have a lens and a little bit of a bias through which we're going to do some analysis here, but I want to be as transparent as possible. I'd like to know what these people did in their prior experience. Now, Amy Coney Barrett has a resume that is insanely impressive, and it's very long, and I didn't see anything in there where she worked for the U.S. Attorney's Office or where she was a prosecutor or worked as a attorney general or anything like that, which is, in my opinion, a good thing. The other kind of final criteria that I put on there was, what is the sparkle factor of each of these candidates? What is going to make them shine? What is it that is going to captivate the American public, or move some senators to confirm or to not confirm this particular nominee? And Amy Coney Barrett is a mother of 7, and she's actually quite charming. I have a clip from I believe it was a nomination process, and she has all her children in the room with her. And I think it's a good sort of introduction into who this woman is. So we will play that shortly. But this is the scorecard. This is the candidate scorecard. Now, this is the sort of overview. We're going to put them all on here. This is going to be the scorecard. So I want to explain this a little bit further, right? So obviously we're talking about the Supreme Court. We're talking about political issues, judicial issues. We're talking about the future of the country, a lot of civil rights. We're talking very, very, very important stuff. I think it's a little bit naive to think that people are having this conversation and being completely unbiased or apolitical. I think anybody who is sort of trying to sell you that cup of tea is being a little bit less than honest with you. Everybody's got opinions, and I think it's important that you understand what mine are. So if we're going to do this analysis and analyze each one of these different nominees, it's important you know what I'm looking at and what I think is most interesting and most relevant to where we are now in 2020. And so what I have come up with is a list of issues that are important to me. And they may not be important to you, or they may be extremely important to you. There may be issues on this list that you think are nonsense. There may be issues that you think should 100% be on this list, and they're not. But this is just the list of stuff that I have curated when I'm starting to think about some of the most pressing issues in 2020, where we're at now. And so there are stuff that I think is certainly important, but I just don't think it's the top priority. I don't think it's hyper pressing in the year that we're in currently. So just keep that in mind. Now, if you have other things that you think should be added to this list, if you have complaints about this list, send that stuff over to me at tips@rrlawaz.com. Just send it right over there. I get all of those emails. I'll take a look and I'll consider making some adjustments to this list. But here are the things that I'm looking for. This is what's most concerning to me. And now let's put this in context. I am a criminal defense attorney. My day job, my entire company, everybody on our team, everybody that we work with here at our office is focused on representing people against the government, against law enforcement, against prosecutors, against judges, against politicians who pass insane laws like mandatory sentencing and who are putting people in prison for marijuana offenses and all of that stuff. So that's where I come from. That's my context. I typically don't like a lot of government. The filter that I tell everybody that I use is the freedom filter. What policies are going to enable the most freedom for the most people without hurting other people? That's typically how I look at things. It's worked out well for me, and I think it's something that I wish more people would sort of adhere to. What can you do in your life that is going to be good for you and make you more free without hurting or impacting or taking pie away from the other person? Let's create policies that provide more freedom, not less freedom. And I'm a civil civil rights, sort of libertarian, small government type of person. So with that lens in mind, let's take a look at some of the issues that I've identified. So this is the issues list. And now what I want to do is run through this and just give you a brief overview about essentially what I'm talking about here. The right to counsel. This is incredibly important from a criminal defense attorney perspective. We want to make sure that these judges are protecting people's right to have an attorney who is somebody who's going through a criminal case, a criminal procedure, a criminal process, being charged with a crime, and they don't have an attorney. There is case law. There are judges who will take these issues and say, well, they didn't deserve an attorney, or they didn't affirmatively invoke their right to counsel. And so they'll say that they didn't deserve that or their rights weren't violated. So I want a candidate who is going to support people having competent representation as they go through the process. Search and seizure. This is a lot of the Fourth Amendment issues. If you get stopped, can the police just go into your car? Can they just go into your house? What do they have access to? Are they allowed to do those things or not? So we're going to look at search and seizure issues. Freedom of speech issues. This is also critically important. We talk about this a lot on this channel. People protesting, people speaking out, people whistleblowing, people providing documents that the government doesn't want you to have, all of those types of things. that, in my opinion, is freedom of speech. We want more freedom, not less. We want less government restrictions on freedom of speech. We want less corporate restrictions on freedom of speech. We want less censorship. We want more freedom of association. We want more of that. So that's what I'm looking for when we're going through these candidates. We're also talking about police accountability and qualified immunity. The name of our show here is called Watching the Watchers, and we want to make sure that the police are being held accountable, that they don't get treated and punished under a different set of laws than you or I would. If they break the law, they should be held accountable to the same standards that you or I would be. And qualified immunity is very close to that. When police break the law, we want to make sure that they're not hiding behind legal fictions that are legal protections that would make them immune to any criminal liability. Privacy, big tech, these are issues I think that are going to be with us for a very long time. We're going to be talking about a lot of the censorship that is taking place on all these big tech companies and sort of we're seeing it this election cycle. There's the little notes that Twitter is adding to certain, boxes, and the little warnings that Facebook is adding, and what is YouTube doing, and all of these different things I think are going to be very important issues. So we want to know how the judges line up on that. Talked about the whistleblower stuff, lockdowns, and masks. This is a new issue that when I was in law school, I never would have even thought would be an issue that we would be dealing with. But this is very, very important. People want to know, how are the judges siding on these issues? Second Amendment and firearms. We've talked about Kyle Rittenhouse on this channel. We've talked about the McCloskeys. These are going to continue to be important issues, especially if half the country wants to defund the police. This may be something that is very, very prevalent in our time. Taxes, always I want to know what's their position on taxes. You may say, well, what the heck does that have to do with the judge? A lot. It has a lot to do with the judge, because remember Chief Justice John Roberts, he said that Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act and the mandate for individuals was constitutional because he characterized it as a tax. So if these judges are going to be sort of making up rules on the bench that are going to impact us, meaning I've got to go get healthcare and I've got to go do these things, otherwise I get penalized, that's important. The death penalty is just another one that is sort of, I think mostly settled, but it is interesting to know, and people always want to know about that. So this is the list of issues. Now, this is not exhaustive. Like I said, if you have anything else you think should go on this list, send it to tips@rrlawaz.com, tips@rrlawaz.com. We'll put that in the description after this live show is over and we update the description. Good time as a reminder to hit the subscribe button. We're going to continue to go on, and we're going to continue to fill this out as we go through. So today we'll do Amy Coney Barrett, and we'll focus on Lagoa, Rushing, and Bade, or whoever the top tier candidates are when we continue to move forward.